Welcome to the 8-Minute Devotion with Pastor Cameron Walcott. The 8-Minute Devotion is a daily message that exists to give you hope, encouragement, and life as we look together at the Word of God. And now, the 8-Minute Devotion.
Hello, friends, and welcome to the Friday episode of the 8-Minute Devotion. We are now at episode 90. We've done a lot of episodes. We thank God for His grace that we've been able to do this. And yes, we are at episode 90, Friday episode. So this is our last episode of the week and the last episode in our series of listener questions. Next week, we'll be jumping back into the book of Philippians. But today, we still have one more listener question. And our question today is this, very simple question. Did dinosaurs exist? Did dinosaurs exist? And this question actually came from my two sons, Caleb and Evan. And they listen to the podcast too. So they got to ask one question. So they sent this in. They actually sent it in by email. Did dinosaurs exist? Well, very simple. The first part of my answer is yes. Dinosaurs did exist. We can't, the bones are there, the fossils are there. This is not something that's made up. So dinosaurs did exist in the past. Of course, their question is in the context of the Bible, in the context of the Word of God, in the context of creation. They were wondering, how did dinosaurs fit into the Word of God? Why don't we see dinosaurs today? And of course, even sometimes skeptics will bring up something like the existence of dinosaurs and say, look, we don't see dinosaurs today. Dinosaurs went extinct millions of years ago. This doesn't fit into a biblical timeline. So they'll use this, the existence of something like dinosaur fossils, to say creation is not true, or the story of God creating everything is not true. Dinosaur fossils are proof of evolution. Of course, that's nonsense. Dinosaur fossils are not proof of evolution. When you actually look at how things should have evolved, dinosaur fossils create a problem for evolutionists. I won't go into it because my science isn't strong enough. I'm not a scientist. I'm a pastor. But I've read several cases where scientists have shown that the dinosaur fossils are more of a problem for evolutionists than they are a solution. But I'm not going to get into that. What I am going to get into is, yes, dinosaurs did exist, and how can that fit into the Word of God? Well, basically, there are at least two answers we can come up with how they could fit into the biblical timeline. Number one, I mentioned yesterday that some Christians believe in a theory of evolution called the gap theory. And that states that in Genesis 1:1, God created the heavens and the earth. Then in Genesis 1:2, the earth became without form and void. And in the gap theory, the belief is there was a former creation, that when God created everything in Genesis 1:1, it was all good, it was all perfect, and dinosaurs were part of that initial creation. But then somewhere along the way, the earth became without form and void. And most gap theorists believe that the earth became without form and void when when Lucifer was thrown out of heaven. Isaiah 14, Lucifer was thrown out of heaven. He came down to the earth, and the earth was destroyed. This also would fit the most popular scientific interpretations that the dinosaurs were killed by an asteroid or by something falling out of heaven. Lucifer falling out of heaven could have had that asteroid-like effect. So dinosaurs would have been wiped out at that time, and the fossils we find today of dinosaurs could have been the remnants of that former creation. There are other things in the Bible that possibly support this. When God told Adam and Eve to fill the earth, He used a Hebrew word that also can be translated as replenish. It's the same Hebrew word He used when He told Noah to replenish the earth. So when Noah is told to replenish the earth in Genesis, it's translated as replenish in English. When the same Hebrew word is used for Adam, it's translated fill the earth. Perhaps it really was saying replenish because the earth was at one time filled. So that's one way the dinosaur bones could have existed within the biblical timeline. They could have been part of a former creation. The second way is quite simply that before the flood, the atmospheric conditions on earth were different. There are some who believe that it didn't rain before the flood. Some Christian scientists believe that. Other Christian scientists to say no, there was rain, but But it is possible that the atmospheric conditions were different before the flood. That would explain why man could live 900 years. Routinely, the patriarchs were living over 900 years old. So it seems that there was a difference in the sun's radiation, a difference in the effects of the sun and aging on people. So maybe that same effect was had on reptiles. Maybe that same effect was had on dinosaurs. And, you could say that really what dinosaurs are they're lizards they're basically lizards who live for a very, very long time. And reptiles don't stop growing during their lives. And that's why if these reptiles lived 900 plus years, they grew to the gigantic sizes we see in dinosaurs. So that's a young Earth creationist explanation of the dinosaurs, is that they were lizards who just kept growing for hundreds of years. And that very well could be true as well. But as we finish up this lesson, what I am going to say is, one way or another, God created everything. And one way or another, all these dinosaur fossils we see today, they're not a problem for us as believers. They're a blessing, because Psalm 24:1, the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. Those dinosaur fossils we find today, those dinosaurs, wherever they were created, whenever they were created, wherever they came from, they were created by God. Those fossils belong to God. Those dinosaurs belong to God. God is the creator. God is the author. God is in control. And when I see something on earth, when I see something in creation that I don't understand, doesn't push me away from God. It pushes me to God, because my faith tells me the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. God created it all. And when I see a mystery or something I don't understand, it doesn't have to shake my faith. It can just push me to God and say, God, I don't understand this, but I know you're good. I know you're in control. I know you're the creator. I know that all of this belongs to you. And it builds up my faith as it draws me closer to Jesus and closer in relationship with him. You see, whenever we face a mystery, whenever there's a mystery, God, why did this happen? God, why did you allow this? God, I see this scientist saying this. I see this discovery. It doesn't match up different things I've learned and understood. Remind yourself, when there is mystery, allow it to push you towards the Word of God. Allow it to push you towards God, and you will always be encouraged that God is in control. God is the creator. God has a plan and a purpose in everything we see. God had a purpose for putting those dinosaurs on the earth. He had a purpose for allowing those fossils to remain. I need the humility to realize I may not know the purpose, but God had a purpose. And there may be some believers that God calls them, that your job is to discover this purpose. Your job is to study these dinosaur fossils. God does that, and God does speak through these people. But I know in one way or another, everything belongs to God. God is in control. So whenever mystery arises, whether it has to do with science, whether it has to do with the will of God, whether it has to do with the Word of God, I don't let it push me away from God. I let it push me towards God. He is the one with all the answers. So be encouraged. I hope you've been blessed by this week full of question and answer. We will do question and answer again sometime in the future. Send us your questions and join us again next week as we go back into the book of Philippians with the encouraging, life-giving messages from the Word of God. Thank you for listening. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week on the 8-Minute Devotion.
Thank you for listening to the 8-Minute Devotion. We trust you have been encouraged and blessed today. Please subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or by visiting the8minutedevotion.podbean.com. For questions or comments, please email us at the8minutedevotion@gmail.com or visit our Facebook page. We would love to hear from you.